She was everything I could have ever wanted in a wife. Loyal, loving, perfect in every way. But that all changed the moment I walked in on them. The shock and betrayal cut deeper than I ever imagined. What I saw shattered everything I believed in. Stay tuned for the truth that will leave you speechless. And don't forget to subscribe for more real-life stories like this. For years, I had thought I had everything figured out. My life was as close to perfect as it could be. I had a loving wife, a beautiful home, and a steady job that kept us comfortable. Emma was the woman I had dreamed of spending the rest of my life with. She was thoughtful, caring, and always put our relationship first. We had our ups and downs, of course, but we always worked things out. At least, that's what I believed. We had been married for 5 years, and over the course of those years, Emma had proven herself to be the perfect wife. She had always supported me, taken care of me, and made sure that our home was filled with warmth and love. Everyone we knew admired our relationship. We were the couple that seemed to have it all together, the ones who always made it look easy. I thought we were a team, unbeatable, unbreakable. But recently, something had felt off. There had been subtle changes, small things that, at first, I convinced myself weren't important. She'd been distant, sometimes caught up in her phone when we'd have dinner, or getting a little quieter at night when we'd talk. I tried to brush it off, telling myself it was just work stress or maybe she was just tired. After all, she worked hard too. We both did. It wasn't until that fateful evening that I began to question everything. I had come home a little earlier than usual, thinking I'd surprise Emma with a nice dinner. I parked the car, grabbed the bags, and walked up to our front door, expecting the familiar smell of her cooking and the sound of her voice. Instead, I was met with silence. I thought it was odd, but I shrugged it off. She might have stepped out for a moment. I walked into the house, and the first thing I noticed was that the kitchen light was off, and there was no sound coming from the living room. That's when I heard the faint sound of voices coming from upstairs. I froze, not sure what I was hearing at first. Emma had always been home when I got there, so why was someone else there? Maybe one of her friends had stopped by. But the tone in the voices, something was off about it. It was intimate, too familiar. Without thinking, I walked up the stairs. My heart was pounding in my chest, and as I reached the hallway that led to our bedroom, I saw them. Emma was standing in front of the bed, laughing at something the man next to her had said. She wasn't laughing like she would with me. No, this was different. It was deeper, more intimate, and that's when it hit me. The man she was with was someone I didn't recognize. He had his arm around her waist, and there was something in the way they stood together that made me feel like I had just walked in on something I wasn't supposed to see. I stood there, paralyzed, not knowing how to react. My mind raced, trying to make sense of the scene in front of me. I wanted to scream, to confront them, but I couldn't find my voice. Instead, I stood there, like a ghost, watching the woman I loved, my wife, betray me in the most painful way possible. When Emma finally saw me, her face drained of color. The shock in her eyes mirrored my own. She stammered something, trying to explain, but the words didn't matter. What I saw was enough to tell me everything I needed to know. "James, I can explain," she said, her voice shaky. But I couldn't hear her anymore. The world around me felt like it was spinning out of control, and I could barely keep my feet under me. The man standing next to her, he finally spoke. "You didn't tell him, did you?" His words were cold, almost taunting, as if he knew what he was doing was wrong but didn't care. And that was it. In that moment, everything that I had believed about my marriage, about Emma, and about our life together came crashing down. The trust I had placed in her was shattered, and all I could feel was the overwhelming pain of betrayal. I turned and walked out of the house, unable to process what had just happened. My mind raced, the questions flooding in. How long had this been going on? Who was he? Why didn't I see the signs? But most importantly, how had I missed the one thing that mattered most? Emma had been hiding something from me, something so deep, so hurtful, that I couldn't understand how it had gone on without me knowing. I had to leave. I had to get out of there before I completely lost control. As I drove aimlessly through the streets, I felt like my whole world was crashing down around me. How could I have missed this? How had I trusted her, loved her, only to find this? The pain in my chest was unbearable. The person I thought I knew was now a stranger to me, and the future I had envisioned with her was no longer something I could hold on to. The days following that night felt like an endless blur. I didn't know where to go or what to do. My world had been flipped upside down, and I was walking through it like a zombie, barely able to comprehend the reality that was now surrounding me. Emma's betrayal weighed heavily on me, every step forward feeling like a struggle. How could she do this to me? After everything we had shared, the love, the promises, the future we had built together, it all felt like a lie. How long had this been going on? Who was he? And most importantly, why had she kept this from me for so long? The first few days after I found out were the hardest. I couldn't face Emma, couldn't even bring myself to look at her. I was so angry, so hurt, that I didn't know how to speak to her. I stayed at a friend's place, telling myself I needed space, that I needed to think. But thinking only brought more pain. I replayed every moment of our marriage, trying to pinpoint when things started to go wrong. Was I blind to the signs? Was I so wrapped up in my own world that I didn't see the cracks forming around me? I had always believed that our relationship was solid, that the trust we shared was unbreakable. We had our problems, sure, but who didn't? But this was different. This was a betrayal that went beyond words. It wasn't just the affair itself. It was the fact that Emma had been living a double life, lying to me every single day. The thought of it made my stomach churn. How could someone I trusted so completely betray me in such a cruel way? I didn't reach out to Emma at first. I couldn't bring myself to speak to her. What was there to say? She had already shown me who she was, and the woman I had thought I knew was gone. In her place was a stranger, a woman who had chosen to hide her actions from me, to deceive me and break my heart. And I couldn't forgive that. Not yet. But after days of isolation, I knew I had to face her. I couldn't keep running from the truth. The conversation would be difficult, but it was necessary. I had to hear her side of the story, even though I knew it would only make the pain worse. But I needed closure. I needed to understand why this had happened, why she had chosen to betray me. The day I finally went back to the house was one of the hardest moments of my life. My heart raced as I pulled into the driveway, the memories of our time together flooding back with every step I took toward the door. I could feel the weight of the past pressing down on me as I turned the key and stepped inside. Emma was sitting on the couch, her face pale and full of guilt. She didn't look like the woman I had known, the woman I had shared my life with. She looked small, vulnerable, as if the reality of what she had done was finally sinking in. Her eyes met mine, and for a moment, we just stared at each other, both of us unsure of what to say. "I'm sorry, James," she said quietly, her voice shaking. "I never meant to hurt you. I never thought it would come to this." I didn't know what to say at first. How could I respond to that? Sorry didn't change the fact that she had broken my trust, that she had shared her life with someone else while I was left in the dark. The words felt hollow, empty. She could apologize all she wanted, but it wouldn't change what had already been done. "How long, Emma?" I asked, my voice tight with emotion. "How long has this been going on?" She lowered her gaze, unable to meet my eyes. "A few months," she whispered. I don't know what happened. I never meant for it to get this far, but I made a mistake, and I'm so sorry. A few months. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. A few months of lies, of deceit, of betrayal. All those times she told me she loved me. All those moments we shared. Were they all just empty words? Had she been thinking about him when she kissed me? When she held me? The anger inside me started to boil over. I wanted to yell, to scream, to throw something, but instead I just sat there numb. I had no words, no anger that would make a difference. Nothing could undo the damage that had been done. I don't know if I can forgive you, Emma, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I don't know if I can ever trust you again. Tears welled up in her eyes as she looked at me, but I couldn't find it in myself to comfort her. She had broken me, and I couldn't pretend like everything was okay anymore. I understand, she said, her voice barely audible. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just need you to know that I'm sorry, and I never meant for this to happen. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what was next. All I knew was that everything I had built with Emma had been shattered in an instant, and now I had to figure out how to move forward without her. The days following my confrontation with Emma were some of the hardest I had ever endured. I wasn't just heartbroken. I was lost. The life I thought I knew, the relationship I had invested everything into, was now a lie. And no matter how much I tried to distract myself with work or the company of friends, nothing could take away the ache in my chest. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her with him. Every memory, every moment of intimacy we shared felt like a joke. The betrayal wasn't just emotional. It felt like an assault on my entire identity. Who was I if the woman I loved could so easily turn away from me? I kept asking myself why. Why would she do this? Why would someone who seemed so perfect for me, who promised to build a life with me, hurt me in such a profound way? Was I that easy to forget? Was our love really that shallow? There were moments when I wanted to reach out to her, when I wanted to hear her explain everything again, to make sense of what she had done. But deep down, I knew that no explanation would make it better. No apology would undo the damage. She had betrayed me, and it felt like I had been punched in the gut over and over again. I began distancing myself from Emma, not just physically, but emotionally. I moved into the guest room, and we avoided talking unless it was necessary. There was nothing left to say. She apologized every chance she got, but I wasn't ready to forgive her. I wasn't ready to pretend that everything was going to be okay. One night, as I lay in bed, I found myself questioning everything. What was I really hoping for? Was I hoping that Emma would magically come to her senses and realize the mistake she had made? Was I hoping that the life we had built together could somehow be salvaged? I realized that I was afraid. Afraid of what life would look like without her. Afraid of starting over. Afraid of facing the world alone. The thought of moving on, of rebuilding my life without Emma, was terrifying. I had always seen us together. She was my partner, my confidant, the person I thought I would grow old with. But now she was a stranger. The woman I loved had betrayed me, and I wasn't sure if I could ever trust her again. I reached out to a close friend, someone who had seen me through tough times before. I needed someone to listen, someone to help me make sense of everything. We met for coffee the next day, and as I sat down across from him, I could already feel the weight of the conversation coming. I don't know what to do, I confessed. I love her, but I don't know how to get past this. My friend looked at me with understanding. He had known me for years, had seen the way I looked at Emma, and he knew how much this had shaken me. You need to take care of yourself, James, he said softly. You can't keep holding on to something that's already gone. She made her choice. Now you have to make yours. His words hit me harder than I expected. I knew he was right, but the idea of letting go was so difficult. letting go of Emma, of the life we had planned together. It felt like admitting defeat, like I was throwing away something I had worked so hard for. But then my friend said something that stuck with me. You can't rebuild on a foundation of lies. If you don't take care of yourself now, you'll be left with nothing but the pain. And you deserve better than that. His words echoed in my mind long after our conversation ended. The pain of betrayal wasn't going to disappear overnight, but I knew he was right. I needed to take care of myself. I needed to rediscover who I was without Emma, without the relationship we had built. I couldn't keep living in the past, clinging to a lie. I had to let go. That night, I sat down and wrote in my journal, something I hadn't done in years. I wrote about the pain I was feeling, the confusion, and the anger. But I also wrote about my hopes for the future. I realized that I still had dreams, ambitions, and a future ahead of me. I didn't need Emma to validate my worth. I could rebuild my life on my own, and I could heal without her. It was the first step in what I knew would be a long journey. I wasn't ready to forgive Emma, not yet. But I was starting to understand that forgiveness wasn't just for her, it was for me. It was the only way I could truly heal and move on. I wasn't going to let this betrayal define me. I was going to take back control of my life. The weeks that followed were a roller coaster of emotions. Each day felt like a battle, between the heartache that still lingered and the resolve I was slowly building. The anger and betrayal were still raw, but slowly I was learning how to take the first steps toward healing. I began to realize that moving forward wasn't just about letting go of Emma, it was about rediscovering myself. I wasn't going to be defined by the hurt she caused me. It was time to build a life for myself again. I threw myself into work, taking on new projects that required my full attention. At first, it was a distraction, a way to avoid thinking about the pain. But as I got more immersed in my career, I began to feel a sense of accomplishment I hadn't felt in months. The work was fulfilling, and the more I focused on it, the more I realized how much I had put my dreams on hold during my relationship with Emma. I had spent so much time investing in her and in us that I had neglected my own passions. I started making time for things I had long neglected, things that made me happy. I enrolled in a photography class, something I had always been interested in but never had the time for. I started taking weekend trips to explore new places, even if it was just a short drive to the nearby countryside. I had always loved nature. But in the past, Emma and I had been so wrapped up in our routine that we didn't take the time to appreciate the world around us. Now I was rediscovering the joy in the small things. Long walks in the park, cooking a meal just for myself, reading books that had been gathering dust on my shelf. I was slowly but surely rebuilding my life. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. There were still moments when the anger would flare up, when I'd think about Emma and the betrayal that had shattered everything. I would wonder if she had ever really loved me or if it had all just been a game. The nights were still the hardest. Those moments when I would lie awake, my mind racing with questions, wishing for answers that would never come. How had she kept the affair a secret for so long? Had I missed the signs? Why hadn't she been honest with me? But as time went on, I realized that seeking answers from her wasn't going to change anything. The truth was, I could never understand why she had done it. I would never get the closure I was hoping for, and perhaps that was for the best. The more I focused on trying to make sense of her actions, the more I was giving her control over my emotions. It was time to take back that control, to stop letting her dictate my happiness. I had to let go of the need for answers and accept that some questions would remain unanswered. That was the only way I could truly heal. One day, I ran into Emma by chance. It was awkward, to say the least. We hadn't spoken in weeks, and the tension between us was palpable. She looked different. Guilt still hung in her eyes, but there was also something else: regret. I could see it in her face as she hesitated before speaking. "I'm really sorry, James," she said quietly. "I don't expect you to forgive me, but I wanted you to know that I never wanted to hurt you. I made a terrible mistake, and I regret it every day." I looked at her for a moment, taking in her words. I didn't respond right away, but deep down, I knew something had shifted in me. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't hurt anymore. I had forgiven her, not for her sake, but for mine. I had accepted what had happened, and I had moved on. There was no more bitterness in me. I had released it all, not because she deserved it, but because I needed to be free from the anger and pain. "Thank you for saying that," I said finally. "But I've moved on, Emma. I'm not the same person I was when this all happened. I've forgiven you, not because you asked, but because it's the only way I can heal." Her eyes softened, and for the first time, I saw a glimmer of understanding in them. "I hope you find the happiness you deserve," she said, her voice sincere. "I already have," I replied. "I've found it within myself." With that, I turned and walked away. There was no bitterness, no anger, just a quiet sense of closure. I had forgiven her, not because she had asked for it, but because it was what I needed to move forward. I realized that my happiness didn't depend on anyone else's actions. It depended on me. As I walked away, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I had finally freed myself from the past. I wasn't the man I had been when Emma had betrayed me. I was stronger, wiser, and more in tune with who I was. The road ahead wasn't going to be easy, but I was ready for it. I had learned that forgiveness wasn't about the other person. It was about releasing the hold the past had on me. And in that moment, I knew that the best was yet to come. The following weeks felt like a fresh start for me. I had done the hard work of letting go of the past, and though the journey was still ongoing, I could feel myself slowly moving toward a new chapter in my life. It wasn't just about forgetting Emma or the betrayal. It was about rebuilding myself, becoming the person I had been before, the person I had almost lost in the chaos of love and trust. My routine had changed, but it had changed for the better. I was waking up with a sense of purpose, eager to take on the day. The days that were once filled with uncertainty and confusion now felt like opportunities for growth. I didn't rush into new relationships or try to fill the void left by Emma. Instead, I focused on the things that mattered to me, the things I had neglected for too long: my career, my hobbies, and my friendships. Work became a place where I could channel my energy, and it was there that I rediscovered my passion. I took on new projects, I worked harder than ever before, and for the first time in years, I felt accomplished. The satisfaction of seeing my hard work pay off was like a breath of fresh air. It reminded me of the person I used to be, the one who didn't need validation from anyone else, the one who was driven and motivated by his own ambitions. I didn't need Emma to complete me. I was already whole. But it wasn't just work. I had reconnected with old friends, friends I had neglected while I had been wrapped up in my marriage. They reminded me of the person I had been before, the person who was spontaneous, fun-loving, and adventurous. Together, we went on weekend trips, explored new places, and laughed at things that hadn't seemed funny in a long time. It was during these moments that I realized I had been so focused on trying to make one person happy that I had lost sight of what truly made me happy. As time passed, I also started focusing on myself in ways I never had before. I joined a local gym to get back into shape, something I hadn't done in years. I started taking care of my health, eating better, exercising, and rediscovering my sense of confidence. I was taking care of my body as much as I was taking care of my heart. The physical changes I saw were a reflection of the internal changes I was making. I was learning to love myself again. learning to appreciate my own worth. One evening, as I sat on my balcony looking out over the city, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The anger and bitterness had faded, and in its place was a quiet understanding. I had been hurt deeply, but I had healed. I had come to terms with the fact that Emma's betrayal didn't define me. What defined me was my ability to rise above it, to learn from it, and to become a stronger, more self sufficient person. I no longer thought about Emma with anger or resentment. I had forgiven her, not for her sake, but for mine. The truth was, I had loved her with everything I had. But now, I loved myself in a way I never had before, and that was enough. The phone rang, pulling me from my thoughts. It was a message from my friend, asking if I wanted to grab a drink. I smiled and quickly typed back, agreeing to meet up. As I set my phone down, I realized that life was moving forward. I had left the pain behind, and I was opening myself up to new experiences. I wasn't rushing into anything or trying to fill the void of a broken relationship, but I was allowing myself to embrace the future with open arms. The road ahead wasn't without its challenges. There would be times when I would remember the pain, times when I would question my decisions. But now I knew how to face those moments. I knew that the past didn't define me, and I knew that I had the strength to create a future that was entirely mine. I walked out the door, feeling the crisp evening air on my face. It was the beginning of something new, a fresh chapter in a life that was no longer controlled by betrayal or heartbreak. I had survived the hardest thing I had ever faced, and in doing so, I had discovered a strength I never knew I had. The future was mine, and I was ready to embrace it. Betrayal doesn't define who you are. It's how you rise from it that matters. Healing takes time, but it's possible. You are stronger than you think, and the best part of your story is still to come. Have you ever faced a betrayal? How did you move forward and reclaim your life? Share your story in the comments below, and let's support each other on the journey to healing. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more empowering stories and real life lessons.